Hello, hello, hello. Like Joel Hall here. And listen, I don't want to leave out of here without talking about some intervention strategies I've come up with over the years to address unhealthy group dynamics, especially as I watched different things arise in my micro room and made adjustments for them. I was pretty bummed out that leadership didn't provide me with intervention strategies. I think that's the start of the issue. What do I mean by that? Let's get serious. We can go down that same list of 25 and I'll just approach how I have done my best to keep those 25 from showing up in my yet room. And here's what's interesting about the Ashtanga Yoga dynamic and maybe some of the conversation around it. I think it's a necessary thing to do because if I don't do it, right, if I'm not monitoring, if I see things like these issues beginning to arise, they will arise. There's an entropy towards it. When things get a certain kind of complicated, they fall apart. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Firstly, I think that we run into the key reason that these things fall apart. It's a lack of critical thinking. In my room, I simply say stuff like, you can skip anything you want. And I also like bear in mind that you are going to either like me or you're not. And that is also fine. I encourage students to ask questions. I encourage them to dissent. I'm doing my best to flip things around for them to explore, to come up with their own answers. I think it's very Socratic. I have strategies where I prompt open dialogue by using questions like, how does this work for you? What do you want from this? What's important in this for you? And this encourages critical thinking for people. Sometimes it spooks them if they haven't thought critically. Self-esteem. In those moments where they're spooked, I could reframe that. I want to build confidence by urging students to take initiatives for themselves and run with whatever they're interested in. I'm confident that I can work with whatever it is that they're interested in. I'm going to work with them. I can reassure them that their independence is a good thing by following along, being interested in what they're interested in. If you build a certain amount of trust, they're allowed to doubt you. You can laugh at it. You can normalize doubt. You can encourage a lived experience of practice, of personal exploration. Oh, I don't know, making the teacher the arbiter of what's right or wrong. In this way, we move from subjective and objective into a place where you can look for reason and evidence or magical thinking. So, like when you ground the practice in biomechanics, functional range conditioning, when you can cite your sources, peer reviewed stuff, when you understand what your tools do physiologically, biomechanically, you can use the terminology and language associated with it that's helpful for the health industry, like doctors. It doesn't mean that you lose any of the reality of the sensational or energetic experiences. In fact, if you play your cards right, you can encourage students to have the best of both worlds where they get to experience their bodies in real time. And if they have some sort of experience, it's their experience to have. Now, this requires confidence in your abilities as a teacher. If you don't let students share what they're interested in, seeing a little bit and allowing yourself some candor with them, then you're not going to build the rapport that leadership demands. When you help students, they're going to try to put you in the role of the healer. If you don't reject those dynamics early and ahead of time by constantly poking fun of yourself and reflecting back what they have done to do this for themselves in the very best of ways, you don't then you're not encouraging them to see you as a peer. And in doing so, you don't get a chance to acknowledge your students' actions as the natural outcomes of their own work. And that's inherently debilitating to their growth. And so, you don't have to fake your funk. You can admit your limitations. It doesn't take away from your good stuff. Clarifying that your approach is experimental rather than strictly traditional, or being able to say when you're learning together and it's new or different. And then also being comfortable dialoguing about what tradition means. This is all great and brings us into a point where You are fostering democratic, accountable leadership. You share decision making with your community. You invite your students in. You let them know that what you do in your room is based on self regulation, self respect, and mutual respect, and that respecting their own limits and the safety of their peers, modeling that by being open to critique and also by having clarity around what your guidelines are and remaining adaptable and pragmatic. Having clear pathways to receiving honest feedback remains essential. That brings us to my next point, which is being open to oversight. I mentioned one of my longtime practitioners, or this practitioner practiced in the jungle while doing agricultural work for years, and she was my age, and she'd been practicing as long as me. And boy, I was worried for a second that maybe the emperor had no clothes, and of course, that was just silly. I was just being worried that I wasn't good enough for her. But no, it actually got to be a relationship of peer support, feedback, and I trust that person. When I say I've had an open door policy, it means letting them give you feedback and empowering more people you trust to give you feedback. Not that you think will tell you what you want to hear, but who you think will help you be the person that you want to be. And that means change behavior when it comes time, but it's ultimately being open to oversight. It's open leadership. It's allowing yourself to have critique. It's allowing yourself to collaborate with others. It means sharing your power. It means avoiding systemic problems by allowing someone else to take a 3,000-foot view for you and trusting a little bit. Danella Meadows in Teaching in Systems would say that systems never fail to surprise and delight the nonlinear ones. And so having someone who can help you anticipate the surprises is a good thing. And you encourage individual autonomy in your yoga room because you respect personal choices. When you get a bunch of Ashtanga yoga teachers around, not everyone's going to see things the same way. Allow for a difference of opinion. The ones who have to pay for their friendships through multi-level marketing programming probably have more dogmatic, narrow-minded views. It's hard to argue with my view, which is like, don't be a dick. And if you are a dick, be funny. But most importantly, do your best to do no harm. Practice with the body you have today. The rules are simple. Accessibility is enabled by presuming competence. If you start with a foundation of presuming that there is an inner intelligence and the person understands already, you just have to find out how to communicate to it. Yoga gets really easy. And if something's self-evident, it's self-evident, and universal truths are universally true. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to respect other people's personal choice and encourage individual autonomy. Look in a yoga room. Is there lifestyle diversity? It's one thing for a space to be safe for marginalized groups, sure, but maybe also look around and see if there's not like some diversity in thought too. Values can be same, but maybe approaches are importantly different. Are they welcome? Are dissenting voices welcome? Are there equal standards? The intervention needs to be such that the same rules apply to everyone, that there's not a special privilege based on finances, like people buying their way into your inner circle, or athletic ability, people practicing their way into your inner circle. Maybe you share standards, and so there doesn't need to be an inner circle. That means there is a respect for departure from yoga lineages. You gotta appreciate that sometimes people need to walk away because the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. This is respect of individual autonomy. This is a declaration of commitment to equal standards, respect. If you don't have an inner circle, you're showing your cards. It's good to show your cards. It's encouraged to cite your sources and to encourage a broad reading of texts, a variety of literatures, and trust that people can come to their own decision and share how you've come to yours. This sort of resource sharing, whether it be on accessibility, ankle mobility, whatever, when you keep your teaching philosophy clear, explicit, and your records easily accessible, you don't have to worry about doing things behind closed doors, and you become clear about inclusivity. The intervention, if you want inclusivity in your room, is to foster an environment where everyone is welcome, regardless of their ability. And you do this by avoiding this like trap that assumes that physical proficiency has anything to do with spirituality. There's no spiritual hierarchy based on physicality. No, your proof has to be in the pudding. Look around, people. Are people focused on practice, or are they focused on status, or are they focused on people doing good things in their community? I know which one I want to be a part of. Thank you so much. And I know plenty of good Ashtanga yoga practitioners who got sick of the petty politics. You know that old Kissinger quote, was it Kissinger? That the reason he left academia because the politics were so vicious and the stakes were so low. I mean, I think that's Ashtanga yoga in a nutshell. I try to maintain civility by not trash talking my peers or colleagues, but I'll damn you with faint praise. Some people are going to be stung because they're going to see themselves in what I'm saying. And they should see themselves in what I'm saying. But I want my peers and colleagues to help me grow. I want to help them grow. But I don't think my peers and colleagues often are out here doing the same job. I think you have some service-minded Mysore style Ashtanga yoga teachers, and then you have some clout chasers. But we'll talk about that another time. I respect others. I'm open to learning from others and admitting when I'm wrong. And people know that because I do it and I share where I learn stuff. It's because I have a real respect of other people's processes. I speak of non-members of the Ashtanga yoga community. I like their spiritual practices. I think there's a lot that we share. And that's a good thing, whether it's in a yoga tradition or a spiritual community or just like being around the way girl. I'm open to learning from others. And in doing so, I get to have real connections with real people. When I'm curious about someone's life, I'm really curious. And I'm not trying to fix anybody or anything. I'm helping people with learning these techniques. That's what I'm doing. And so I'm always doing that in the interest of supporting people's connection with their families, their friends, and their communities, not just their Ashtanga Yoga Mysore style community. In general, I like don't demand that people come any amount of times. Can I say to them, yeah, it's going to be hard to learn if you're brand new and you only show up twice, so you'll have to study extra hard. But if I put high pressure demands on attendance, I am slowly on the slope towards becoming a high pressure commitment crew. And I don't want that, even though I do think it's good to practice more often sometimes and learn how to scale. I also think it's good to practice at home. I also think it's good to not feel shame about your practice. I want to encourage genuine connection with people. I want to really mean it. Also, that means admitting what I don't know and referring out. If someone's shoulder hurts in a way that I can't help with, you need to go talk to a doctor. ETC, ETC. If you're coming in discombobulated, like it's time to maybe talk to a mental health professional. If you're showing up malnourished and growing fuzz on your cheek, maybe it's time to talk to a doctor about disordered eating. None of that is within my scope of practice. So if I'm really respecting people's beliefs and structures, if I'm really fostering community, that means that I'm also willing to open myself up to people's experience of their own individuality, that I respect that and in my own way model it by being myself and not someone else, by not putting on airs. I try to inspire students to explore their individuality and capabilities by honestly enjoying the human experience of Michael Joel Hall and doing it on purpose. Encouraging that kind of thing combats groupthink. It aims to make students independent thinkers, and I love that. I like to fancy myself an independent thinker after all, and helping other people learn how to practice, to grow, to be themselves on purpose. It's so cool. And that means being transparent about what I do. What I like, there are no secret teachings, knowing that I'm not magically blessed or something. I provide modifications and props for all, that I show what techniques I use, and I don't know what I don't know. That's just the reality of it. I don't create demands for too much commitment. We're a supportive environment, meaning that I clearly explain what I'm looking for in the room, what the structures are. I manage the expectations. I'm clear about what our goals are, and I encourage members to respect that. Participation is voluntary, everything is optional. And I try not to criticize behavior I want to see replicated, so I never shame anyone for opting out. It's just not the way it's done because I want to create a supportive environment where I create a space for students to express their discomforts or pain openly so that we can integrate different interventions. This means that concerns are addressed compassionately. I've got to encourage their comfort. I've got to listen. I have to back off when told that I need to stand ground, when I need to, but I don't need to foster unhealthy commitments. Healthy boundaries are encouraged and obsessive loyalty is not required. This means acknowledging how fallible I am, and that means referring out when something's out of my scope of practice. It means acknowledging who my colleagues are who are good at things that I admire and sharing that openly. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy acknowledgement and like honesty about who I am. I'm so proud of the other stuff that I'm good at. I don't mind talking about other people who are awesome at things that are different from me. It's great because they're a part of my community. To have a good community, you got to be a good community member. I prioritize values over aggressive recruitment. I'm not trying to push people into my yoga room by selling them on something flashy. I'm just showing up being the friendly neighborhood yoga teacher and trusting that the yoga will do what the yoga does. It tends to do just that. When I prioritize values, values are prioritized. It sounds simple, but people are always value based until it costs them money or something. Then you get to see whether or not people's values are real. Genuine community and authentic relationships are born out of valor. This means that, like, well, valor, first of all, I think is what you do when no one's looking, right? It's doing the right thing, but also doing the right thing when no one else will know. It's not just doing the right thing when no one else will know. It's doing the right thing when it costs you and no one ever knows that it costs you to do the right thing. I think there's a real lack of valor all over the place. But anyway, what does an authentic relationship look like? How do you foster them? Well, you start by treating all students equally. And by that, I mean finding the special way to treat each student because each student is special. It means not exploiting them. It means not leaning into their vulnerabilities. It means being aware that you'll work with vulnerable populations and actively being kind and considerate of this because people are whole people. And that actually is a quality. And I think this means ensuring that care persists beyond the initial involvement. Is it a financial relationship, or a community connection? For example, that same student I mentioned earlier who practiced with me for years, who I was intimidated by and then ultimately was so grateful for. They got married, had a kid, life got tough. They didn't show up in the yoga room, but I didn't stop being their friend and I didn't stop being their yoga teacher just because they stopped showing up every day. We got coffee when we needed to get coffee, and I was so grateful because it's an authentic relationship and I love them. And, you know, if we're talking relationships and dollar signs, you can't turn finances into spiritual assets. Making money doesn't, you're doing a good job, but losing money doesn't mean you're doing a good job either. Pricing and revenue models have to be openly discussed because if you're not making enough money to live as a yoga teacher, it's going to get weird. And if people can't afford to come practice, you need avenues for it so that it's not totally elite. But if you're doing that and the room can only fit so many people, how many people do you have? Well, I don't have an answer for you. I have lots of ways to try to figure that out. Why? Because we don't guess, we assess. And one of the best ways to do that with numbers is by being transparent so that you can figure out how to offer sliding scales and how you can take pressure off of sales so that you can build community resources and collective power without creating abusive or discordant financial transactions. Also, there should be no abuse or humiliation. I was called out and I recognized that that was like the way it was done there for me. And I came home and I modeled it sometimes, and there are ways in which I don't like it. I don't like a shaming ritual and I don't perpetuate them. I think that discipline dysmorphia exists. People are always out here feeling like they didn't do enough, and it's because they have a harsh inner critic or an inner saboteur, and I don't need to foster that. There's no room for shame. And that means that I have to find ways to be respectful. It also means that as a joker, if I'm calling someone crazy, I'm playful about it. I'm not going to call someone who is being a nut crazy, not someone who's actually crazy. That is not trauma-informed language, but I'm being silly here. I am me. I'm just going to keep being me. I have a zero tolerance for my abuse parameters. You don't see me platforming abusers if I can avoid it. I don't do business with people who I think can't be trusted, especially if I think that they're great yoga teachers and shitty bosses, of which there are a great many. Now, listen, I'm of a certain age now where when I was coming up, the old guard was old, but there was an incoming guard. And I'm of the age where we were the assistants to that guard. And that guard was strangely, weirdly authoritarian. And you know who, like, you could kind of clock as the abuser? The ones who didn't pay their assistants or asked way too much or you know, if you're not building equity and stake inside of your relationship with your mentorship, or the value proposition isn't made explicitly clear, and there's equity and equality involved, not just clout and association, fame, then you're not really ethically above the board, in my opinion. I just don't really have any time with that. If I don't fuck with you, I don't fuck with you. And I'm fun to fuck with, y'all. I'm a good time. People will tell you that. And I also am a tough time because I don't fuck with people who we shouldn't be fucking with, even if you want to, because they have something to offer. And I can be a real pain in the ass about it. Why? Because I'm an equal opportunity pain in the ass. If I think something is true, I'll tell you. If something is not true and I find out, I will also tell you because I am wrong often. That can happen. But I don't seem to have much of a seat at the table, and I don't want one either. After I got too much fame back in the day, I wanted to get my opinions and ideas out there, but the whole world didn't need to see all this. I felt like the whole world had already seen enough of that. But I think it's weird when marginalized groups don't have a seat at the table. Where are my queer brothers and sisters in positions of power? Why are the ones that have power, how are they helping others accumulate power? It's John Paul Sartre by way of bell hooks, isn't it? How you help others get free is how we all get free. None of us are free until all of us are free. How about that? And so I just want to know, like, who's making the choices? Who's the leadership? Are we ever going to be able to remove the misogyny and patriarchy, etc., that seems to be so ingrained in the practice? I'd like to think so, but I'm a queer dude. I don't know. I'm still a good time, even if I don't get a seat at the table. So funny. Again, I eat good, so I'm not too worried, but I do have some strategies to share, right? Around integrity, around being yourself. Well, I try to be myself. I can think about having my best friend Pooja's little sister, Arthi, in my yoga room. This is like a double whammy because Arthi is actually Indian, right? She is my best friend's little sister. And we're talking the girl who walked me through the breakup with my first love, sobbing in her bed in our dorm room freshman year of college. Get into it. This little sister, who, by the way, I can't believe was even old enough at this point to be in my room, she was in my spare room. And I don't get to pretend to be anyone else because she is out here calling me Mikey. And there's no bigger pride, I suppose, in my community relationship, who am I, what am I scenario. When I was visiting Pooja's family, her mom asked me to help her with her knee because of what a good yoga teacher she had heard that I was. I was honored and we did a good job. This is integrity, right? I have to show up and be myself and I have to do it honestly. I have to be who I am. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. Life is too important to be taken seriously. What I'm saying is being transparent. Being transparent about your intentions, your techniques, and uphold the ethical standards that you espouse in your teaching, in your community building. And like, I got to tell you, it's not so hard to say, hey, my personal opinion is not my professional opinion. I struggle with X, Y, and Z. I have a high risk tolerance. As an example, I don't recommend that most people go around jumping and flip the way I might do sometimes, not because I'm paternalistic, but because there are safer ways to do many things, and I encourage that. But I also encourage autonomy. I fess up that sometimes I like to touch the fire to see if it's hot. My parents raised me like that, and it's who I am. I'm not pretending I'm not. It's integrity, but like having the bravery to be yourself. And look around. Who has long relationships that aren't invested in finances? It's so clear. Who's trying to accumulate power by pretending to be something that they're not, or by needing to uphold an image? Who can have their image completely shattered by admitting that they're big, dumb, and stupid? Certainly me. Why? Because I know I'm a smarty pants. And so one of my favorite avatars is himbo. And I get to be a himbo because I'm not sleeping with my students. I might have inadvertently hurt somebody, but I have avenues for avoiding it. I take feedback. I take notes. I do my best. I may have spoken out of line. I may have coached poorly before, but I continue to do better. And there's not a cycle of abuse. Teaching is a practice. Community membership is a practice. Being a good community member is a practice. When one of my students, who I love to pieces and whose practice and personality I admire, tells me that for all the yoga postures in the world, the thing that she learned the most, the thing that really sticks with her, the thing that she'll remember when I'm dead, is that it's important to be a good community member on purpose and to prioritize that, to show up and be that way on purpose, to take it seriously. And boy, I think it's true because I love my community. I love the people who love me. I like being in support, and I learned self-love through Ashtanga Yoga, and I love sharing it with others. I get a little worried that when people show up with cryptic behavior and lack of transparency, I just wonder why these celebrity teachers or whatever, when was the last time they randomized a room? And like, when was the last time they talked about what I've learned in my growth in my local community? Because that's actually my milieu, right? That's where I am every day. I'm like posting the big ideas, but if you want the personal stuff, it happens. I share anecdotally, but I try to remain evidence-based because when I share best practices on the internet in person, I'll share my growth journey with you. I'm not ashamed, but it's also not trauma porn for people on the internet or what have you. And look for the narcissistic yes man cultures that exist by people who are trying to accumulate some sense of power through financial stakes, their attention. It's just gross. If doing the right thing were always profitable, everyone would always do it. But I am living proof now. My master room is 12 years old. My corporate yoga programming, where I teach leadership and through mindfulness and yoga and through Ashtanga Yoga with a 48-week curriculum that I have taught 15 years, 18 years, a long time. I'm old. I just look this good. Doing it all on purpose is where it's at, isn't it? Seeing how if you stick to your values, it sometimes does cost you money for a while. You know how annoying it is when you have people who show up completely attached to paternalistic, gate-kept information and you reflect back to them opportunity? They fucking often hate it until, they'll stick around and they like it because it's dope and it's the way to do things, frankly. Or they get out. Who's not upset about them getting out? Me. Because I don't need those kinds of people around. I can't help them. I'm doing good in my community. I am now so deep in the game that I've been tracking all of these numbers for so long that it's so cool that I can actually say, from a data-driven standpoint, that by doing the right thing, my word of mouth is incredible. Our room is full. We do a good job locally. Our numbers are great. What are the key performance indicators we look to for success? I'm watching the people that I serve do good things in the world over and over again. I'm watching people take big swings. I'm watching them get direct hits. I'm watching them get married. I am watching them grow and I am being supported. Girl, my parents both had cancer this year. It was awful. They lived with me. I have a commercial space above my home, and that's where my shala is. And I took care of my parents for 10 months. Do you know what it's like to go up and down the stairs and have people in your house in your yoga shala all the time while you're trying to stay regulated, taking care of your family, it's a lot. I'm grateful for the mothers in my yoga room who provided peer support. And I learn through growing. My student Ron, who's practiced with me for 15 years, he's 84 years old, and he's now wrestling with the deeper things of yoga. The practice is amazing. If you want it to remain that way, having pretending like there can't be bad things that happen is a stupid way to do it. Collecting data, A/B testing, trying different things, understanding the nature of systems and organizations, and concerning yourself with community wellness is all going to just pay out. The numbers will add up, or they won't, because your neighborhood can't sustain it and you'll just have to get a job doing something else. Sorry for you. But maybe it can, and it might, but not if we keep empowering dirtbags. Michael Joel Hall. Bye.